The morning fog hung thick over San Francisco International Airport as Captain Sarah Chen walked through the instructor's lounge, her flight bag slung over her shoulder. At 38, she looked like any other civilian flight instructor. Khaki pants, polo shirt with the Bay Area Aviation Academy logo, and the kind of calm demeanor that came from years of teaching nervous students how to handle small aircraft. What the student pilots didn't know was that Sarah had once been Captain Chen of the United States Air Force, with over 3,000 hours flying F-22 Raptors in combat zones across 3 continents. She'd left military service 5 years ago after losing her co-pilot in a training accident, an incident that had shaken her confidence so deeply that she'd walked away from high-performance aircraft forever. Before we continue this incredible story, tell us in the comments, from which city in the world are you watching this video today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help Hidden Hero Stories honor the quiet heroes who walk among us. Teaching civilian students to fly Cessnas felt safe, predictable, therapeutic even. Sarah had found peace in the routine of ground school lessons, pattern work, and helping nervous first-time pilots discover the joy of flight. It was a far cry from supersonic combat missions, but it allowed her to stay connected to aviation without the weight of life or death decisions. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Sarah was scheduled to fly with Marcus Rodriguez, a 24-year-old software engineer working toward his private pilot license. They'd been together for 6 weeks, and Marcus was finally ready for his first solo cross-country flight, a milestone that every pilot remembers forever. "Ready for the big day?" Sarah asked as Marcus completed his pre-flight inspection of the Academy's Cessna 172. "Nervous but excited," Marcus replied, running through his checklist one final time. 3 years of dreaming about this moment. Sarah smiled. She remembered that feeling, the mixture of terror and exhilaration that came with being solely responsible for an aircraft. "You've got this. Just remember what we've practiced." They were cleared for takeoff at 9:05 a.m., climbing into the crisp Northern California morning. Sarah would accompany Marcus to the practice area, observe his navigation and communication skills, then return to base while he continued solo to Monterey and back, a 3-hour journey that would earn him his cross-country endorsement. At 2,500 feet, cruising north over the bay, Sarah's radio crackled with an emergency transmission that would change everything. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is United Flight 447, Boeing 777, engine fire, hydraulic failure, requesting immediate emergency vectors to nearest suitable airport." Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked at Marcus, who was focused on his navigation, unaware of what she'd just heard. Through her headset, she could hear San Francisco Tower's response. "United 447, roger your Mayday. Turn right heading 180, descend and maintain 3,000. Be advised, San Francisco is currently below minimums due to fog. Oakland and San Jose are also reporting low visibility." Sarah grabbed her binoculars and scanned the horizon. There, about 15 miles northeast, she could see a large aircraft trailing black smoke from its left engine, descending erratically. The Boeing 777 was fighting to maintain control, but even from this distance, Sarah could see it was in serious trouble. "Marcus," she said calmly, "I need you to turn us toward that aircraft. We're going to observe and assist if needed." "What aircraft?" Marcus asked, squinting through the windscreen. "Trust me. Just fly heading 045 and maintain altitude." As they closed the distance, Sarah could see the full scope of the emergency. United 447 was a wide-body jetliner carrying what looked like 300-plus passengers, and it was clearly in distress. The left engine was completely engulfed in flames, the aircraft was yawing heavily to the left, and the pilots were fighting to maintain level flight. Sarah keyed her radio to the emergency frequency. "United 447, this is November 74 Bravo, civilian aircraft observing your emergency. I have you in sight. How can we assist?" The response came immediately, and Sarah could hear the strain in the pilot's voice. "November 74 Bravo, United 447. We've lost primary hydraulics, engine fire won't extinguish, and we're having trouble maintaining heading. All nearby airports are below minimums. We need options." Sarah's mind raced. She knew every airport within a 100-mile radius, every runway length, every approach procedure. But more than that, Her military training was automatically analyzing the situation. Aircraft performance with engine failure, glide ratios, terrain clearance, weather factors. United 447, stand by, she transmitted. Then, to Marcus, I need you to take us up to 4,000 feet and hold an orbit pattern. Can you do that? Marcus nodded, though his face had gone pale as he realized the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Sarah pulled out her sectional chart and tablet, calculating distances and runway requirements for a Boeing 777 with engine failure. San Francisco was socked in with fog. Oakland was marginal. San Jose was reporting 2-mile visibility, better than the others, but still challenging for an emergency approach. But there was another option, one that civilian air traffic control might not have considered. United 447, this is November 74, Bravo. Are you familiar with Moffett Federal Airfield? Negative, never been there. It's a former Navy base, now NASA facility. Runway 14 left 3, 2 right is 8,000 feet long, 200 feet wide, built for heavy military aircraft. No fog, excellent visibility, and it's directly on your current heading, 2 miles. There was a pause. November 74. Bravo, we don't have approach plates for Moffett. We're not certified for that airport. Sarah felt her heart pounding. She knew Moffett intimately. She'd landed there dozens of times during her Air Force career when it was still an active Navy base. She knew every approach, every landmark, every potential hazard. United 447, I can provide approach guidance. I'm familiar with the field. November 74. Bravo, what are your qualifications? This was the moment Sarah had hoped never to face again, the moment when her past and present collided, when the peaceful world of civilian instruction crashed into the high-stakes reality of life-or-death aviation. United 447, I'm a former military pilot, 3,000 hours fighter time, qualified on military approaches to Moffett. I can talk you through it. The radio fell silent for several seconds. Sarah could only imagine the conversation happening in the United cockpit, whether to trust their lives and the lives of 300 passengers to guidance from an unknown civilian pilot in a tiny aircraft. Finally, November 74, Bravo, United 447. We're running out of options. We'll take your guidance. Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with accepting responsibility for other people's lives. It was the feeling she'd thought she'd left behind forever when she walked away from military service. United 447, Roger. Turn right heading 190. Descend to 2,500 feet. I'll position myself to guide you to Moffett's runway 32 right. The field is currently reporting clear skies, 10-mile visibility, winds calm. Turning right 190, descending 2,500. Sarah directed Marcus to fly parallel to the wounded jetliner, close enough to maintain visual contact, but far enough to stay clear of any debris if the situation worsened. As they maneuvered, she could see passengers in the windows of the 777, some pressed against the glass, watching their small aircraft with what she imagined was a mixture of curiosity and terror. United 447, you should have Moffett in sight now. 2 o'clock, about 8 miles. It's the long runway with the large NASA hangars at the north end. Tally-ho, we have the field. We're declaring a full emergency. Can you provide approach guidance? This was it. The moment when Sarah's 5 years of peaceful civilian instruction ended and her military training took over completely. United 447, affirm. You're currently south of the extended centerline for runway 32 right. Turn left heading 320 to intercept the final approach course. I'll call your altitude corrections. Left 320, United 447. Sarah watched as the massive aircraft slowly turned toward the runway, black smoke still streaming from its left engine. The pilots were doing an incredible job maintaining control, but she could see the aircraft was descending faster than normal, a clear sign that they were losing lift with the failed engine. United 447, you're slightly high on the glide path. Begin a moderate descent. Target altitude at the threshold should be 100 feet. Beginning descent. Marcus stared in amazement as Sarah transformed before his eyes. The calm flight instructor he'd known for 6 weeks had become someone else entirely. A precise, authoritative voice guiding a crippled airliner toward safety. United 447, you're coming in a little fast. If possible, reduce speed and configure for landing. We've got limited flap authority due to hydraulic failure. We're coming in hot. Sarah's mind calculated quickly. A Boeing 777 with partial flaps and engine failure would need every foot of Moffat's 8,000-foot runway. There would be no margin for error. United 447, understand. Runway 32 right is 8,000 feet long with a 1,000-foot overrun. You'll have plenty of room for a long rollout. As the aircraft turned onto final approach, Sarah could see emergency vehicles racing toward the runway from all directions. Moffat's fire department plus mutual aid from surrounding cities, creating a corridor of flashing lights along the approach path. United 447, you're looking good on final. Centerline looks perfect. Just maintain your approach path. The massive aircraft was now less than 2 miles from touchdown, and Sarah could see the pilots were fighting to keep it stable. The left wing kept dipping as the asymmetric thrust from the single operating engine tried to pull the aircraft off course. United 447, slight drift to the left. Correct right, small inputs. Correcting right. In the final moments of the approach, Sarah felt time slow down. She'd guided hundreds of aircraft to safe landings during her military career, but never like this, never with so many lives at stake, never after so many years away from high-stakes aviation. The 777's main landing gear touched down firmly on Moffat's runway, sending up a cloud of tire smoke and brake dust. The aircraft bounced slightly, settled, then began its long rollout down the center line. United 447, nice landing. Continue straight ahead. Emergency vehicles are standing by. Thank you, November 74 Bravo. You just saved 312 lives. Sarah watched as the aircraft finally came to a stop about 5,000 feet down the runway, emergency slides deploying almost immediately as passengers began evacuating. From her vantage point at 4,000 feet, the evacuation looked orderly and calm, exactly what you'd hope for in an emergency landing. Marcus finally found his voice. Sarah, who are you really? She looked at him, seeing her own reflection in his amazed expression. I used to be someone who flew fast jets and made split-second decisions. Today, I remembered how. The radio crackled again. November 74 Bravo, San Francisco approach. Outstanding job on the approach guidance. Can you contact us on 124.35 for coordination? Sarah, Marcus said quietly, you just saved an entire airplane full of people. She shook her head. The United pilots saved those people. I just helped them find their way home. As they flew back to their home airport, Sarah's phone began buzzing with messages. Word of the emergency landing was already spreading through aviation channels, and someone had identified her as the civilian pilot who'd provided approach guidance. But Sarah wasn't thinking about recognition or publicity. She was thinking about the passengers on that United flight, business travelers, families, children, who would go home tonight because a chain of events had put her in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The landing at Bay Area Aviation Academy was quiet and routine, a stark contrast to the drama they'd just witnessed. As they taxied to the flight line, Sarah could see her supervisor waiting with several other instructors, all looking concerned. Is it true? Asked Tom Morrison, the chief flight instructor. Did you really guide a United 777 to an emergency landing at Moffett? Sarah nodded. The pilots did all the hard work. I just knew the airport. Sarah, Tom said carefully, the FAA is going to want to debrief this. And probably the media. Your name is already being mentioned on aviation frequency reports. That evening, Sarah found herself in the unusual position of being at the center of a media firestorm. The story had everything journalists loved. A former military pilot turned civilian instructor, a dramatic emergency, and a successful rescue of 312 people. But Sarah declined all interview requests. Instead, she drove to Moffett Field, where the United 777 sat on the ramp surrounded by investigators and emergency vehicles. The passengers had long since been bused to hotels or connecting flights, but she wanted to see the aircraft up close. Captain James Wilson, the United pilot, found her standing near the airport fence looking at his aircraft. You're the civilian pilot, he said, approaching with his co-pilot. I wanted to thank you personally. Sarah turned to face them. You two did the flying. That was an incredible piece of airmanship. Wilson shook his head. We were lost. All the airports we knew were below minimums, and we were running out of altitude and options. You appeared like an angel and guided us home." His co-pilot, Captain Lisa Park, added, "I've been flying for 20 years, and I've never heard approach guidance that precise from anyone, civilian or military." "Where did you learn to do that?" "A long time ago in a different life," Sarah replied. "I flew F-22s for the Air Force." The three pilots stood in comfortable silence for a moment, sharing the unspoken bond of aviators who'd faced crisis together. "What made you leave?" Wilson asked. Sarah looked at the damaged engine of the 777, now cold and silent. "I lost my confidence after a training accident. Thought I was done with high-stakes flying forever." "And now?" She considered the question. For 5 years, she'd convinced herself that teaching students in small aircraft was enough, that she didn't need the adrenaline and responsibility of complex aviation. But today had reminded her of something she'd forgotten. Some people are called to serve in moments of crisis, and walking away from that calling doesn't make it disappear. Now I'm wondering if I've been hiding from something I was meant to do. The story of United Flight 447 dominated aviation news for weeks. The NTSB investigation praised both the crew's airmanship and the exceptional civilian assistance that had guided the aircraft to safety. Sarah's role was analyzed and celebrated throughout the industry. But the real change came in the calls Sarah began receiving from major airlines, flight training organizations, and even her former Air Force wing commander. "Sarah," Colonel Martinez said during their phone conversation, "we've been following the story. That was outstanding work. Exactly the kind of decision-making and leadership we trained you for." "Thank you, sir. Have you considered coming back?" "Not necessarily to fighters, but we have training positions, test pilot programs, opportunities for someone with your experience." Sarah paused. A month ago, the answer would have been an immediate no, but something had changed during those crucial minutes guiding United 447 to safety. "I need to think about it, sir. Take your time. But remember, some skills are too valuable to waste." That weekend, Sarah made her decision. She called Tom Morrison and submitted her resignation from the Aviation Academy, but not to return to military service. Instead, she applied to join United Airlines as a captain, specifically requesting assignment to their Emergency Procedures Training Division. She wanted to teach airline pilots how to handle the unexpected, how to stay calm under pressure, how to make decisions when standard procedures weren't enough. Her application was approved in record time. 6 months later, Captain Sarah Chen was back in the left seat of a commercial airliner, but this time with a different mission. As United's chief instructor for emergency procedures, she taught pilots from around the world how to handle situations like the one she'd helped resolve that day over San Francisco Bay. Her students called her the Emergency Landing Lady, though she preferred simply Captain Chen. She had a reputation for impossible scenarios, complex failures, and simulations that pushed pilots to their absolute limits. But she also had a reputation for never losing a student, never accepting failure, and always finding a way to bring everyone home safely. Marcus Rodriguez, her former student who'd witnessed the emergency guidance, completed his training and became a commercial pilot himself. He often told the story of the day his flight instructor revealed herself to be someone who'd never really stopped being a pilot. She'd just been waiting for the moment when her skills were needed most. On quiet evenings, when Sarah walked through United's training center, she sometimes paused to look at the photographs lining the hallway. Pictures of successful emergency landings, rescued passengers, crews who'd faced impossible situations and found solutions. Among them was a photo from that day at Moffett Field. United Flight 447 on the runway, slides deployed, passengers safe, and in the background, barely visible, a small Cessna circling overhead. Sarah rarely pointed out her role in that picture, but she knew that every pilot who saw it understood the lesson. Heroes don't always wear uniforms or fly the biggest aircraft. Sometimes they're civilian instructors in small planes, ready to guide others home when the sky turns dangerous. And sometimes the most important flight of your career happens when you're not even supposed to be flying at all. The aviation community never forgot United Flight 447 or the civilian pilot who'd guided it to safety. Sarah's actions that day became a case study in emergency resource management, civilian-military cooperation, and the value of experience in crisis situations. But for Sarah, the real legacy wasn't in the textbooks or the news stories. It was in the knowledge that 312 people had gone home to their families that night, and that her years of training, both military and civilian, had finally found their truest purpose. She'd learned that you never really stop being what you're meant to be. You just wait for the moment when the world needs you to remember. So I ask you, have you ever met someone whose quiet competence suggested they had extraordinary experience hidden beneath an ordinary job? Someone who seemed to possess skills that went far beyond their current role? Share their story in the comments. Tell us about the instructor, the mechanic, the administrator who demonstrated capabilities that surprised everyone around them. Subscribe to Hidden Hero Stories for more narratives about the quiet heroes in our communities, the former military pilots teaching in civilian schools, the combat veterans working in peaceful professions, and the extraordinary people who step forward when their unique skills are desperately needed. Thank you for watching, and remember, the next time you see a flight instructor, a driving teacher, or any civilian educator, consider that they might have backgrounds and experiences that could save lives in ways you never imagined. Heroes don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just appear when you need them most, ready to guide you safely home.